Today we continue with Christian and Hopeful in the Pilgrim's Progress as they have come out of the castle of despair and are going through the delectable mountains where they've met the shepherds. And here's where we begin. Then I saw in my dream that in the morning the shepherds called up Christian and Hopeful to walk with them upon the mountains. So they went forth with them and walked a while, having a pleasant prospect on every side. Then said the shepherds to one another, "Shall we show these pilgrims some wonders?" So when they concluded to do it, they had them first to the top of the hill called Error, which was very steep on the furthest side, and bid them look down to the bottom. So Christian and Hopeful looked down, and saw at the bottom several men dashed all to pieces by a fall they had from the top. Then said Christian, "What meaneth this?" The shepherds answered, "Have you not heard of them that were made to err, by hearkening to Hymenaeus and Philetus, as concerning the faith of the resurrection of the body?" They answered, "Yes." Then said the shepherds, "Those that you see lie dashed in pieces at the bottom of this mountain are they, and they have continued to this day unburied, as you see, for an example to others to take heed how they clamber too high, and how they come too near the brink of this mountain." Then I saw that they had them to the top of another mountain, and the name of that is Caution, and bid them look afar off, which they did. They perceived, as they thought, several men walking up and down among the tombs that were there. And they perceived that the men were blind, because they stumbled sometimes upon the tombs, and because they could not get out from among them. Then said Christian, "What means this?" The shepherds then answered, "Did you not see a little below these mountains a stile that led into a meadow on the left hand of this way?" They answered, "Yes." Then said the shepherds, "From that stile there goes a path that leads directly to Doubting Castle, which is kept by Giant Despair. And these men, pointing to them among the tombs, came once on pilgrimage, as you do now, even till they came to that same stile. Because the right way was through the rough in that place, they chose to go out of it into that meadow, and were taken in by Giant Despair and into Doubting Castle, where after they had a while been kept in the dungeon, he at last had put out their eyes and led them among those tombs, where he left them to wander to this very day, that the saying of the wise man might be fulfilled, he that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead." Then Christian and Hopeful looked upon one another with tears gushing out, but said nothing to the shepherds. Then I saw in my dream that the shepherds had them another place, in a bottom, where there was a door in the side of a hill, and they opened the door and bid them look in. They looked in, therefore, and saw that it was within very dark and smoky, and also they thought they heard there a lumbering noise as of fire, and a cry of some tormented, and that they smelt the scent of brimstone. Then said Christian, "What means this?" The shepherds told them, saying, "This is a byway to hell, a way that hypocrites go in at, namely, such as sell their birthright with Esau, such as sell their master with Judas, such as blaspheme the gospel with Alexander, such as lie and dissemble with Ananias and Sapphira his wife." Then said Hopeful to the shepherds, "I perceive that these had on them, even every one, a show of pilgrimage, as we have now, have they not?" "Yes, and held it a long time too." Hopeful, how far might they go on pilgrimage in their day, since notwithstanding they were thus miserably cast away? Shepherds, some further and some not so far as these mountains. Then said the pilgrims to one another, "We had need to cry to the strong for strength." Shepherd, "Aye, and you will have need to use it when you have it too." By this time the pilgrims had a desire to go forwards, and the shepherds a desire they should, so they walked together toward the end of the mountains. Then said the shepherds to one another, "Let us show the pilgrims the gates of the celestial city, if they have skill to look through our perspective glass." The pilgrims then lovingly accepted the notion. So they had them to the top of a high hill called Clear, and gave them their glass to look. Then they essayed to look, but they remembered the remembrance of that last thing that the shepherds had showed them made their hands shake, by means of which impediment they could not look steadily through the glass. Yet they thought they saw something like the gate, and also the glory of the place. Then they went away and sang, "Thus by the shepherds secrets are revealed, which from all other men are kept concealed. Come to the shepherds then, if you would see things deep, things hid, that mysterious be." When they were about to depart, one of the shepherds gave them a note of the way, Another of them bid them beware of the flatterer. The third bid them take heed that they not sleep upon the enchanted ground. And the fourth bid them Godspeed. So I woke from my dream. And I slept, and I dreamed again, and saw the same two pilgrims going down the mountains along the highway toward the city. Now a little below those mountains, on the left hand, lieth the country of Conceit, which country there comes into the way in which pilgrims walked, a little crooked lane. Here they met with a very brisk lad that came out of the country, and his name was Ignorance. So Christian asked him from what parts he came and whither he was going. Sir, I was born in the country that lieth off there, a little off to the left hand, and I am going to the celestial city. Christian. But how do you think to get in at the gate? For you may find some difficulty there. Ignorance. As other good people do, said he. Christian. But what have you to show at the gate that may cause that gate should be open to you? Ignorance. I know my Lord's will, and I have been a good liver. I pay every man his own. I pray, I fast, I pay tithes, I give alms. I have left my country for whither I am going. Christian. But thou camest not in at the wicket gate. That is at the head of the way. Thou camest in hither through some crooked lane, and therefore I fear, however thou may thinkest of thyself, when the reckoning day shall come, thou wilt have laid to thy charge that thou art a thief and a robber, instead of getting admittance into the city. Ignorance. Gentlemen, ye be utter strangers to me. I know you not. Be content to follow the religion of your country, and I will follow the religion of mine. I hope all will be well. And as for that gate you talk of, all the world knows that's a great way off of our country. I cannot think that any man in all our parts does so much as know the way to it, nor need they matter whether they do so, since we have, as you see, a fine, pleasant green lane that comes down from our country the next way into it. When Christian saw that the man was wise in his own conceit, he said to Hopeful whisperingly, There's more hopes of a fool than of him, and said moreover, When he that is a fool walketh by the way, his wisdom faileth him, and saith to every one that he is a fool. What? Shall we talk further with him, or go out of the way at present, so leave him to think of what he hath heard already, and then stop again for him afterwards, and see if by degrees we can do any good of him? Then said Hopeful, Let ignorance a little while now muse on what is said, and let him not refuse good counsel to embrace, lest he remain still ignorant of what's the chiefest gain. God saith that no understanding have, although he made them he will not save. Hopeful. He further added, It is not good, I think, to say all to him at once, lest us pass him by, if you will, and talk to him anon, even while he is able to hear it. So they both went on, and Ignorance he came after. Now when they had passed him a little way, they entered into a very dark lane, where they met a man whom 7 devils had bound with strong cords, and they were carrying him back to the door that they saw in the side of the hill. Now good Christian began to tremble, and so did Hopeful his companion. Yet as the devils led away the man, Christian looked to see if he knew him, and he thought he might be the one Turnaway that dwelt in the town of Apostasy. But he did not perfectly see his face, for he did hang his head like a thief that is found. But being gone past, Hopeful looked after him, and espied on his back a paper with this inscription, Wanton Professor and Damnable Apostate. Then said Christian to his fellow, Now I call to remembrance that which was told me of a thing that happened to a man hereabout. The name of the man was Little Faith, but a good man, and he dwelt in the town of Sincere. The thing was this. At the entering in of this passage there comes down from the Broadway gate a lane called Dead Man's Lane, so called because of the murders that are committed there commonly. And this Little Faith, going on pilgrimage as we do now, chanced to sit down there and slept. Now there happened at that time to come down to that lane from Broadway gate 3 sturdy rogues, and their names were Faint Heart, Mistrust, and Guilt, 3 brothers. And they espied Little Faith where he was, came galloping with speed. Now the good man was just awake from his sleep, and was getting up to go on his journey. So they all came up to him, and threatening language caused him to stand. And at this Little Faith looked as white as a cloud, and had neither power to fight nor fly. Then said Faint Heart, Deliver thy purse. But he, making no haste to do it, for he was loath to lose his money, Mistrust ran up to him, and thrusting his hand into his pocket, pulled out thence a bag of silver. Then he cried out, Thieves, thieves! With that, Guilt, with a great club that was in his hand, struck Little Faith on the head, and with that blow felled him flat to the ground, where he lay bleeding as one who would bleed to death. All this while the thieves stood by. But at last they, hearing that some were upon the road, and fearing lest it should be one great grace that dwells in the city of good confidence, they betook themselves to their heels, and left this man to shift for himself. Now after a while Little Faith came to himself, and getting up made shift to scrabble on his way. This was the story. Hopeful. But did they take from him all that he ever had? Christian. No, the place where his jewels were they never ransacked, so he kept those still. But as I was told, the good man was much afflicted for his loss, for the thieves got most of his spending money. That which they got not, as I said, were jewels. Also he had a little odd money left, but scarce enough to bring him to his journey's end. Nay, if I was not misinformed, he was forced to beg as he went to keep himself alive, for his jewels he might not sell. But beg and do what he could, he went, as we say, with many a hungry belly, the most part of the way. Hopeful. But is it not a wonder that they got not from him his certificate, by which he was to receive his admittance to the celestial gate? Christian. 'Tis a wonder, but they got that not, though they missed it not through any good cunning of his, but for he being dismayed with their coming upon them, had neither power nor skill to hide anything. So 'twas more by good providence than by his endeavor that they missed of that good thing. Hopeful. But it must needs be a comfort to him that they got not his jewel from him. Christian. It might have been a great comfort to him had he used it as he should. But they that told me the story said that he made but little use of it the rest of the way, and because of the dismay he had in their taking away his money, indeed he forgot it a great part of the rest of the journey. And besides, when at any time it came into his mind, he began to be comforted therewith. Then would fresh thoughts of his loss come upon him all again, and those thoughts would swallow it all up. Alas, poor man, Hopeful said, this could not be but a great grief unto him. Christian. Grief, aye, a grief indeed. Would it not have been to any of us, had we been used as he, to be robbed and wounded too, and in that strange place as he was? 'Tis a wonder he did not die with grief, poor heart. I was told that he scattered almost all the rest of the way with nothing but doleful and bitter complaints, telling to all that overtook him that he overtook in the way he went, where he was robbed, and how, and who did it, and what he lost, and how he was wounded, and how he hardly escaped with his life. Hopeful. But 'tis a wonder that his necessities did not put him upon selling or pawning some of his jewels, that he might have wherewith to relieve himself in his journey. Christian. Thou talkest like one upon whose head is the shell to this very day. For what should he pawn them? Or to whom should he sell them? In all that country where he was robbed, his jewels were not accounted of, nor did he want the relief which could from thence be administered to him. Besides, had his jewels been missing at the gate of the celestial city, he had, and that he knew well enough, been excluded from an inheritance there, and that would have been worse to him than the appearance and villainy of 10,000 thieves. Hopeful. Why art thou so tart, my brother? Esau sold his birthright, and that for a mess of pottage, and that birthright was his greatest jewel, and if he, why not might Little Faith do so too? Christian. Esau did sell his birthright indeed, and so do many besides, and by so doing exclude themselves from the chief blessing, as also Caitiff did. But you must put difference between Esau and Little Faith, and also between their estates. Esau's birth was typical, but Little Faith's jewels were not so. Esau's belly was his God, but Little Faith's belly was not so. Esau lay in a fleshly appetite. Little Faith did not so. Besides, Esau could see no further to the fulfilling of his lust. For I am at a point to die, he said, and what good is my birthright to me? But Little Faith thought it was his lot not to have but a little faith, but was by his little faith kept from such extravagancies, and made to see and prize his jewels more than to sell them, as Esau did, his birthright. And we'll pick up there tomorrow, as our time for this video is almost at an end. Thanks for watching today.